So today we are continuing with our topics, and our port of call as of today is the origins of prophecy in Israel, which is also a controversial issue. I think we touched on the first two topics, the law and the covenants, and we even had some hints of some of the prophets. So Judaism is all about the prophets. Like 90% of the stuff in Judaism has something to do with the prophets. That's why you find out that even when they set the papers, you never miss a paper. Like you never miss a question with the prophet. And so it's wise to do the prophets and cover all the prophets. I'll try to explain each and every one of them. But what I can say is, before we talk of prophetic individuals, let us talk about prophecy itself. What is a prophet? What is prophecy? Right? I think it will, as a starting point, it's quite important. So according to our syllabus here, we are under Judaism, and we touched on covenants, law, then prophecy and its origins. That's where we are. So it has two objectives in which we have to, number one, we have to reflect on the definitions of prophecy. There are various definitions of prophecy. So we have to delineate or explain the different definitions of prophecy. And then secondly, we must analyze or critique theories on origins of prophecy. And the theories on origins of prophecy are two, right? There is a belief that a prophecy was unique to Israel. Then there's a belief that prophecy was a borrowed phenomenon. So as of today, we are just going to touch on the definitions of prophecy and the theory that it was borrowed. Then tomorrow we'll touch on the fact that it was unique to Israel. It's that simple, right? So what can I say here? What can I simply say? Let us hear from various scholars what they say about a prophet. It's quite important, right? So Bishaw and Mazodze, they say that it is difficult to come up with an absolute definition of the term prophet. This is because there are many theories. A theory is just an explanation on something. So this is because many theories are given on the origins of prophecy in Israel, and there's no definition in the Bible. Unfortunately, we don't have sort of a specific definition in the Bible. However, generally, you can say a prophet is a religious figure or a sacred practitioner, something who does something special. So, and another way of describing a prophet is like a prophet can also be defined as Yahweh's mouthpiece or a spokesperson, as is supported by the fact that they introduce their message with the prophetic formula. That's say Yahweh, the prophetic formula. There is a biblical scholar called Muhlenberg, J. Muhlenberg. He says that a prophet is a covenant mediator. This links with the topic of covenants. So this makes Abraham a prophet in one way or the other. This makes Moses a prophet, a prophet too. This makes Nathan a prophet too, because they were like part and parcel of a sort of a covenant mediation, like we touched on covenants. So a mediator, someone is a go-between. In Shona to Musondos, Pambacho Mara wants to approach them directly. He needs someone to communicate with. So he's a mediator or he's a mouthpiece, Yahweh's mouthpiece, right? So there is H. Gankeo. He says that a prophet is an individual with a relationship with the divinity of God. Like he's an individual with a relationship with the divinity of God. Like these are various definitions, yes. So the word prophet, according to one of the best scholars I like so much, his name is what? B.W. Anderson. He says that the word prophet comes from the Greek word prophetess, which literally means one who speaks for another, especially for a deity. And the corresponding Hebrew term is nabi, which comes from the word nab. Nab means to call, to announce, or to name. So that's the duty of the prophet, like is referred to as the nab in Hebrew terms, according to B.W. Anderson, which simply means to call, to announce, or to name. Thus, a prophet can be defined as someone who communicates the divine will, someone who communicates the message of God. Yes. So, although the term Nabi has an active meaning, that is one who calls or an announcer, emphasis here is on the role of the prophet of proclaiming what? A message. Sometimes advance approach on direct. He speaks to these prophets. So Eubank, another scholar, says that a prophet is one who is compelled to speak by his intense experience with God and expresses himself not only by words and signs, but sometimes by accepting suffering and even death. So the process of becoming a prophet involves some challenges, a little bit of suffering. I'll give Moses as an example. He was even afraid to approach Pharaoh, so that's part of the suffering. And he had a huge burden in the wilderness. Yes, but most of the Israelites were so troublesome. So this definition is important. Why is it important? Because it touches a number of characteristics or a number of features of an Israelite prophet. That is, it speaks from an inward force. Compulsion comes from his strong sense of God's existence. So they use various methods to convey his message. And that was a courageous person. He used to be courageous. So they could use symbolism, they could use songs, they could use similes or metaphors, just like what we do in literature. They could also use the messenger style of speech, Yes. So there's also this scholar called R. Wilson. He defined a prophet as one who stood between God and the Word and human beings. And we have various like earliest prophets, which include Abraham, we have Moses, we have Samuel, we have Elijah, we have Elisha, we have Ahijah of Shiloh, we have Nathan the God, we have Micaiah Benimla, we have Amos, So some of the prophets operated as individuals. So Amwaishada R11, Wamwaishada Vari a group. It's no matter prophetic bands or prophetic guilds. So those who operated in groups via a master, they usually had a leader or a teacher, right? So at the end of the day, we all, if you are leading a certain group, one leader and one way or the other, they become sort of your disciples, That's the understanding. So let us move on. I think I've explained much about that. Yeah. So let us look at the origins of prophecy in Israel. What are the key areas? We have the theories. Then we also have to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the word of the theories. So, what am I saying here? I said that the origins of prophecy in Israel is just like the origins of the Great Zimbabwe. It is shrouded in mystery. Like when we talk about the Great Zimbabwe, there are some Eurocentric writers which say that it was built by white people. Then there are some Afrocentric writers who say that it was built by the Shona. So these are the different, the divergent of the differing theories. So we also have such an understanding in what? In origins of prophecy. There's a group of scholars which say no, the prophecy, Israel, they borrowed it. Because for us to say you've borrowed something, we have to see similarities. If we would say we borrowed the fashion from America, then we must see similarities. Yes. If in America they are wearing beige jeans, then we also wear them here in Zimbabwe. We can safely say we borrowed the fashion. But isusu kana tichipfeka nhembe kuAmerica kusina nhembe, it means nhembe is unique to us. That's the understanding. That's just as simple as that. So the origins of prophets in Israel is controversial and surrounded with the skepticism, some questions and doubt. It is not easy to say precisely where, when, how, and why, and who started with the prophecy in Israel. So there is a scholar called G. von Rad. He argues that the origins of prophecy in Israel is a difficult problem. And the problem starts from the fact that it is difficult and not easy to define the term what? Prophecy. However, two theories have been advanced, like I say. So let us touch on the borrowed phenomenon theory. Right. So there are scholars, Johannes Lindblom, W.F. Albright, J. Bright, T. Robinson, J. Pritchard. They say that prophecy did not start in Israel. It was borrowed from the surrounding nations. So these scholars argue that the concept of prophecy was not unique to Israel. It was a borrowed phenomenon. They borrowed it from outside. They even said that Israel later on became a nation. Remember, it was migratory. The Israelites were coming from Egypt, right? Going to Canaan. So that Canaan was surrounded by those countries called the ancient Near East in this context. So they are saying that before the Israelites even came, prophecy was already around and existing in what? In the ancient Near East. So for them, the concept came from a non-Israelite environment and did not start with Israel. Right. So Lindblom even goes on to say that the Israelites' prophecy that they were even following was derived from the countries which already followed it. Right. Because similarities, like they are seeing similarities found between Israelite prophecy and ancient Near East prophecy, like in countries like in areas like in locations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, Phoenicia, Syria, Canaan, and Assyria. So, which specific prophetic traits or prophetic characteristics compelled them to come up with this conclusion that the Israelites borrowed prophecy? What am I saying? I once gave this example of fashion. So if we would say we borrow things from America, we must come up with what? Specific examples. Right? To prove that we borrow. Number one, we can say we have hip-hop in Zimbabwe. Hip-hop is originally from America. I really specifically don't know, is it Jamaica or America? So we can say we borrowed it, just like Zim Danzo. Zim Danzo is from Jamaica or something. Then we added our Zim, like the culture of performing on rhythms and stuff. So this makes it sort of a borrowed what? Phenomenon. So we want to give specific examples. Why did they say the Israelites borrowed? Because you cannot just come up with the frivolous allegation that someone has borrowed something. You must give what examples. If you can say Zimbabwe copied or borrowed Zindanzo, you have to come up with what? With examples. Why are we saying so? The rhythm culture, the types of what, the type of singing and stuff, like having your hair locked and stuff, So there are some similarities there also saw between the Israelites' prophecy and the ancient Near East prophecy. Number one, the concept of ecstasy. Ecstasy was appearing in both in the ancient Near East and in Israel. So the concept of common prophetic titles, prophetic authority. When you talk about prophetic authorities, whereby a prophet commands something, then it is followed. Then they follow it. That's what we call prophetic authority. And again, form and content of the message, the types of messages which were delivered in the ancient Near East were also similar to those delivered in Israel. And also the ability to foretell and forthtell, foretelling is about, you can be prophesied or told about what is really happening in your life, unbeknownst to you. You might have cancer, for example. Then a prophet tells you that you have cancer. Or a prophet might say you die next week. That's like forthtelling, telling you about what's happening in the future. That's the characteristics of one of the works of the prophet. So it was also done by the ancient Near East prophets. So J. Bright says that he put forth the population resemblance theory. He argues that a population akin to Hebrew existed in northern Mesopotamia, and the various customs of the Hebrews have parallels to those of Mesopotamia. Like the Israelites, they say that they have a certain culture which they copy from Mesopotamia. He further argues that prophecy in Israel developed as a unique concept with that of the ancient world. There are close parallels of this prophecy with that found in extra-biblical text, such as the Mari text of Upper Mesopotamia. So there is also the issue of what? Of like their extra-biblical sources. We have what we have in the Bible, right? Number one. Then pananozonzima extra biblical sources like vanoti Mari text ndo pawanongwa ine evidence yekuti zviri Mari text zviri kufanana nezviri muBhayibheri saka imi makakopera. You borrowed this because in some of the Mari texts there are some similarities in creation stories. The story of Adam and Eve, flood stories, the Garden of Eden, and the Tower of Babel in Genesis, and those found in the Mari text. So these stories which are found in the Bible, the story of Adam and Eve, the flood stories of Noah, whereby God destroyed the people with the floods. You can talk of the Tower of Babel in Genesis. There are some similar stories in the Mari text. So this scholar is arguing that no, the Israelites borrowed. because of these similarities. So arguing from these similarities, J. Brighter stated that Israelite prophecy started in Mesopotamia with Abraham, who according to Genesis 20 verse 7 is an element of prophecy. So they are like arguing strongly that they borrowed, right? So the origins of prophecy in Israel must be associated with the ancient Near East, right? So they say some of the areas have some things which the Israelites copied, right? So one of the tablets tell the legends of Zimrilim. There is also the legend of Wenamon. Have you ever heard about that? The legend of Wenamon, in which there was a prophet who came and prophesied about the people who came, that they wanted timber. He foretold. He also gave a message. He had prophetic authority to an extent that when he said that, the people followed that, So the content of the message was to tell the king to be obedient. That is from the Zimrilim, king of Mari. So we have the legend of Wenamon. We have the legend of Zimrilim. We also have the admonition of Ipuwa. All those texts, all those legends, all those stories expound or expose the prophetic activities, right? Which are similar to those found in Israel. Like in this legend of Zimrilim, the content of the message was to tell the king to be obedient to Hadad, right? The message was this prophet telling the king to respect their God, because these people from the ancient Near East, they were into idolatry. They used to worship other gods. So this king is being advised to follow or to obey the commandments of their God called Hadad, who would in turn bless him or curse him if he disobeys, right? Because that I don't know if that God spoke, but it is written that I am the God who made you king of Mesopotamia. If you obey me, I will bless you. If you disobey me, I will punish you. So the seer is said to have delivered the message in the form of an oracle, while in the state of ecstasy. Ecstasy is whereby someone is uncontrollable, is being controlled by the spirit, right? That's being in ecstasy. So you find out that the concept of ecstasy even appears in the legend of Wenamon. When that youth prophesied under the legend of Wenamon, he prophesied under the influence of ecstasy. And we find prophets in Israel also in ecstasy. If you read Numbers 11, when Moses back up a spirit yake to the 70 elders, that was ecstasy, contagious ecstasy. If you talk of Elijah, when he killed 450 Baal prophets, as you ecstasy, right? If you talk of Abraham moving around the streets of Israel naked for 3 years, that's ecstasy. You get the sense? If you talk of Jeremiah buying Zagatakura Jogi or the iron bar, because you need to be abnormal to be controlled by the spirit, that's ecstasy. So to go to Zakaitika Mana, ecstasy appear, kuma theories, kuma stories. It's also appearing in Israel. You can also talk of the title seer was also used to refer to some prophets in Israel, such as Samuel. It did not start in Israel, it started in those ancient Near East areas. So they are coming Then there's also the oracular type of prophecy, both in form and content, like an oracle, like the prophetic message, the how it's shaped, right? How they said it in the ancient Near East is similar to how they said it in Israel. So they said the Israelites borrowed, So how the Israelite prophet uttered their message. So Israelite prophets delivered messages in the form of oracles, and they often confirmed to kings that it was Yahweh who had appointed them over their respective lands. Thus, obedience will be rewarded, while disobedience attracted a curse, such as Amos' message to Jeroboam. Amos, when he told Jeroboam that he will be cursed, it's also similar to the legend of Zimrilim, when that prophet oracle said that you have to listen to Hadad so that you can be blessed and cursed. So we are also finding a similarity in which an Israelite prophet called Amos approached an Israelite king called Jeroboam, and advised him to listen to Yahweh's message. Because if he doesn't do that, he will be punished. So you can also talk of Isaiah's confrontation with King Ahaz, according to Isaiah chapter 7. Yes. Right. Legend of Wenamon. So those similarities help us to come up with this argument, which alludes to the fact that the Israelites borrowed the prophecy. So features similar to those of Israelite prophets are noted in the story also of Wenamon. I would like to reiterate it. It's one of the most common stories. there was ecstasy demonstrated. Did the Israelites? So it's an issue of comparing. Did these guys perform ecstasy? Perform under the influence of ecstasy? Okay, the Israelites also did so. There's also prophetic authority. There's also the ability to what? To foretell, right? So was ecstatic prophecy, besides the Israelites, it was also common in Phoenicia in the 11th century. And you also find out that like Moses, Elijah also followed that. So the Baal prophets also worked under the influence of what? Of ecstasy, right? You get this? So these scholars, for example, B.W. Anderson argues that the question about the origins of prophecy in Israel should be of necessity be traced back to the ancient Near East, because Canaan originally was part of what? Of ancient Near East. They came back to Canaan and it was surrounded by the, like what? Like by the other ancient Near East areas. So there's a scholar called T. Robinson who also argues that Israel borrowed its religious ideas and institutions from her Near Eastern neighbors, largely Canaan. She inherited both the law and the prophets from her predecessors in Palestine, right? And again, argument in Israel. Why? Because the Israelites, it was a younger nation. Vakasvika pane nyika dzadzichitoexista kudhara kwenguva yakareba, so obviously vakatongokopa macultures enyika idzodzo ndo zvavari kuedzotaura. So also Israel was much younger than the nations found in ancient Near East. Thus, if we find showing aspects similar to those in ancient Near East, one can be tempted to conclude that she borrowed them from a what? From a surrounding the neighbors. So you can read the text too, right? So next lesson we'll argue against this. We'll say no, Israelite prophecy was unique to Israel. Right.